So I know we really want to break down some different baby and toddler sleep myths, because myths are kind of dangerous. You just said yourself, you like, I don't want to make a blanket statement because they can have such not negative connotations, because one person could hear it and be like, oh, that's true for everyone. So myths can be very dangerous in that same way. So let's break down some of the common myths that we hear. So I know, like, the first one you want to talk about is that sleep training isn't a necessity.
Yeah. Yeah. So often sleep training can get talked about as like this rite of passage. And, like we said, I'm never going to give like a blanket statement of every family needs to sleep train, because it totally depends on the family's priorities and their circumstances and their goals and just their family life in general on whether they would want to or not. So while sleep training can absolutely be beneficial and is the valid choice, it's also, you're not going to do a disservice or put your child at a disadvantage if you don't sleep train. Your child will not sleep with you or need you to sleep forever. It may be 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, or, at the very least, when they move out of the house, they're going to move past needing your help to sleep at some point. So it's okay to not sleep train. You shouldn't feel any guilt about not sleep training, just like you shouldn't feel guilt about sleep training.
Yeah, awesome. And the next one, I think I wrote wrong in our thing. It's sleep training is harmful, is the myth. Correct, right? Okay.
Yeah, correct. I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there is a lot of, I would say, lack of understanding of the research we do have around sleep training, and then a lot of things that are kind of miscited or research and observations that are misused to say that sleep training is harmful. So, for example, we have longitudinal studies that look at kids who were sleep trained. Probably the most famous one is a 5-year study, followed families, and 5 years after sleep training, after that initial meeting, they compared the children who were sleep trained with the children who weren't, and found no differences whatsoever. And so we have that evidence. There is no evidence of harm in the literature, and that goes back to what we last talked about too. There were no differences in these kids, so you also aren't saying that kids who were sleep trained are better off than their counterparts. That's just not what we found. And then there are things, on the other side where, oh gosh, I could get into some things. You stop me if if I'm talking too much, but
Good.
just, a lot of times, some of the brain damage that we know happens from abuse and neglect situations, that is often equated to sleep training. And I would say sleep training in a loving environment is nowhere near abuse and neglect, and what children in orphanages who lay in cots all day because there aren't enough hands, these are two very different things. And so trying to draw parallels is just it's gross in my opinion. And then things like research on monkeys, like baby monkeys who have literally never had contact with their mothers, and looking at the response, how they handle that stress, that being equated to sleep training. There's a lot of just extremes. It's really used in an extreme way, but the data just isn't there's nothing that is looking at sleep training from a study perspective that shows harm, that has found harm.
Sleep props aren't bad or good.
Yeah. So a lot of times I do a lot of calls with parents. I do a free call before families work with me, just to hear their situation, to see if we'd be a good fit. And I hear time and time again from moms, usually it's moms saying, oh, I've been nursing him to sleep forever, and I know that's bad, and I know I need to stop it. And I always stop parents, and I'm like, it's not bad. What you're doing, this isn't like a moral issue, right? It's what you've been doing, and it's probably been working for you for a period of time, because that's why you've continued to do it. And now you've reached the point where it's not serving you anymore and you want to change. So it's never bad to nurse your child to sleep, or to rock them to sleep, or to help them to sleep in any way. That's not bad, but it may reach a point where it's unhelpful. And you're the one that makes that decision, not any outside person saying, oh, that's bad, you shouldn't do that. You're making a rod for your back, or you're spoiling them. You are the parent, and you get to decide what's helpful and what's not helpful.
It's like kind of back to what we were saying before about like everyone's kind of different, and we shouldn't be necessarily labeling things as good and bad. Obviously there's extremes of things that are good and bad, but yeah, it's like how someone parents or chooses to parent should not be labeled as good or bad when it's just what works in their family. Oh, hello.
I have a cat here.